All right, we got a treat, a little bit of a different thing. Instead of going over homework or doing chapter lectures, we got Spire Energy representatives, Andy and Eric. I'm going to let them introduce themselves more directly, but please give them your undivided attention and welcome to our class.
Perfect. So we'll do introductions just real quick. I'm Andy. So I'm an audit manager with Spire, and I'll go through a little bit more of my introduction here in just a minute.
Yeah, and I'm Eric. I'm an audit senior with Spire, and I work with Andy.
I'm going to advance the slides real quick. Maybe.
Of course, the way.
There we go. So today we're going to go over just a couple things. So we'll talk about who we are, who Spire is. We're going to talk about some of the things we do. So Sarbanes-Oxley is a pretty big part of our day-to-day. We do a lot of operational audits and then IT audits. But first,
Yeah, for every presentation that we do at Spire, we kind of make sure that we have kind of a safety initiative just to open the presentation up with. So obviously it's fitting that we talk about natural gas. If you smell natural gas, get out of the room fast, especially out of the building as fast as you can. It's typically a gas leak or some other item that is using gas that could be causing some sort of faulty issues. So the first thing you need to do is get away, call in to your emergency responders, either through 911 or Spire has an emergency hotline to call as well to come address the issue appropriately. And then make sure that you stay clear of the area until somebody tells you that it's safe.
so just a little bit about myself. Once again, my name is Andy Karcher. I'm a manager of internal audit. I am an alumni of Truman. So that's how I kind of got involved and kind of got asked to come. We got asked to come up. So I started my career off in external auditing. So spent about 2 years there and then transitioned into industry. So, and then I've worked my way up through the organizations ever since. So just real quick, why internal audit? So for me, it was a good place to gain company knowledge. So like I joke with folks that this is what I'm going to do till I figure out what I want to do when I grow up. So it was a good fit with an accounting degree. So one of the things you guys are learning a lot of, whether you realize it or not, is processes and systems. And that knowledge is going to apply very well across an entire organization, not just the accounting function. And so it's good exposure to a cross section of the entire company. So we get to work with a little bit of everybody. I mean, the CEO all the way to the guys installing meters and piping the ground. So how do I get where I am? So approximately 10 years of progression up to manager. So I'll turn over to Eric for his quick introduction.
Sure. Similar to Andy, kind of the same reasons as to why I wanted to be an internal auditor. With Spire, I was seeking an opportunity to move back to the St. Louis area, and I had previous internal audit experience that I enjoyed. And like Andy said, you immediately have access to add value to the company. You're not just looking at financials, you're looking at risks and sharing areas where you can have an opportunity to have an impact. And that's what really draws me. I always call it the world's longest field trip, because you're always going somewhere and learning something new about a process that you've never heard of. Very similar to that. It's always a good place for career growth and networking. You're meeting new people and you're growing the skills that you have on every audit that you do. How did I get to where I'm at today? Again, like Andy, I started in a small public accounting firm as part of my last 2 years of undergrad, and then had a chance, lucky enough to get a full-time job with ADM and worked with an ADM, which is a grain company, a lot more than just grain, but spent the majority of my career within the ag industry before coming to Spire.
Yep. So just I'm gonna go to the next one, just a little about who Spire is. So we are basically a natural gas utility. So we currently have a 3-state footprint, mainly here in Missouri, then some in Alabama and Mississippi, soon to be Tennessee, as we're closing on the gas assets in Nashville, Tennessee come March. So we're actually growing right now. It's kind of an exciting time to be with the company. But our main focus is providing gas to homes for things like home heating or hot water heating for cooking. So that's our main function. I'm going to go to the next slide. I think you're doing the gas related businesses.
Yeah, so we have quite a bit of different businesses that we're related to, not just the utility side. We also have a marketing segment, which we are purchasing, transferring the gas, scheduling that transfer, when to be moved, and then as well as selling gas and storing gas to be sold at a later time. A lot of hedging activity
Yep.
occurs during this. We do try to fully hedge. We don't take much of a position just
Yeah.
because it's not a good idea in pretty much any industry to take a long position in any or short position in any way, shape or form. But yeah, that's just the marketing segment. And do you want me to keep going through the?
It's up to you. I
Yeah.
can take this one if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so we also have our midstream segment, which is comprised of pipelines. We have two interstate pipelines, one that runs from what they call the Rocky Mountain Express, which goes across the country down to St. Louis. And then we have our MoGas pipeline, which goes across into Illinois and also goes through quite a bit of Missouri. The other thing is we have gas storage. So we have two storage fields, one out in Wyoming that serves mainly California and the West Coast. And then we have one in Oklahoma that serves kind of the mid-continent region. And that picture on my profile earlier was me in my full FR fire retardant gear out there because it's under such high pressure that everybody's required to wear fire retardant gear out there. So that's just some of what those pictures are. So, and just want to talk a little bit about our community impact. I won't dwell on this too much, but one of the things we value at Spire is plugging into our community. So a couple of things that we do to further that is we give every employee 8 hours of paid time off to go and volunteer for a charity of their choice. So things like we've had folks go to the food bank. I spend a lot of time doing stuff with scouting. So these folks that think we're doing a trail, my guess is I think what they're doing in that picture. We also have our Dollars for Doers program where for every 10 hours we give to a charity, they will give $100 to that charity up to $500 a year. So kind of a cool program, just something they like us to highlight when we come talk to groups. So on to kind of what you guys really want to hear about today is kind of internal audit. So basically, our purpose is we're providing independent, objective viewpoints to hopefully add value to the business. So we're hoping to come in, look at your process, add some insight, and leave you with some to-dos on how to make your process better. So our mission is to enhance, protect the organization. So, and to further that, we're independent of the organization. We report directly to the board of directors. So we do this through a myriad of ways, operational audits, Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, helping our externals, an agreed upon procedure we'll talk about in a little bit. And then finally, we'll talk about our reporting structure in just a second here, if you want to go to the next slide. So I won't dwell on this, just kind of show our shop. We're a shop of 12, so 13 during summers when we take on an intern. So, but that's just kind of, we're pretty average in that size. So you'll see anywhere from about 4 to 20 professionals in an audit shop, depending on the size of the organization. And it really does fluctuate depending on how large your org is. And you'll tend to see it fluctuates with market cap, right? So the larger the business, obviously, the more auditors you're going to have. So I just want to talk really quick. I know Dr. Barnes asked us to talk a little bit about some of the certifications. So the first one, CPA, I'm sure hopefully all you are familiar with the CPA, basically, general accounting, audit, and business knowledge. Certified internal auditor. So internal auditing does have its own certification given out by the International Institute of Auditors. And so basically that focuses around auditing knowledge and then the global IA standards. Certified fraud examiner, and I'll let you talk to that one.
Yeah, the certified fraud examiner, also the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, has their own certification, specifically related to fraud investigations and how you go about anti-corruption and fraud investigation. Certified fraud examiners are able to testify in a court of law as part of an investigation in which they can assert yes or no if a fraud has occurred, but they can't attest to who committed the fraud. But yeah, that's why I invested my time in that, just because I felt it was a cool certification and specialty that nonetheless that most do not have.
Yeah. And Eric also has his
CAA.
CAA. Let me back up. I have my CPA. Eric has his CIA and CFE. And then the last one, our IT manager is a CISA, or a Certified Information Systems Auditor. And so this basically goes over the various IT frameworks and auditing IT systems. So those are some of the relevant certifications. One of the questions we often get about certification, do we find it valuable? The answer is yes, and more to the point, we're one of the few areas of the company that's actually required to have certification. It's a metric we do report to our board on a quarterly basis. So and in turn, our company is generous enough, they do provide us the support to get the necessary education to keep up with those certifications.
We do.
So just a little fun graphic. So kind of, I don't know if you guys have seen this with others, but this is probably the first time you guys have interacted with an internal audit, a lot of you. So, I think most people think we do taxes. We don't do taxes. Most of my friends just think I count money. The boss thinks we're superheroes and can do anything. So we get seen as the cops a lot. So some meetings actually make a point of sitting towards the outside of the room so they forget I'm there so that they can feel free to talk. Because we do unfortunately get seen as the gotcha police, and something we've worked on quite a bit, but it's one of the things, whether you're an internal or external, one of the things to always realize is read the room and know that you're going to be seen as the police some of the time. So, we think we build teams, and what we really do is a lot of paperwork. So, but it's a lot more fun than that. We'll get into some of that.
So,
Sarbanes-Oxley testing. So who knows what Sarbanes-Oxley is? Okay, good majority of the folks. So won't spend a ton of time on that. But basically, and we'll have another slide on this, but basically we do the program administration. So we make sure that they're designing their controls, and then we go back and do the testing. Operational audits. So we do a mixture of operational, which can be a whole myriad of things, from looking at our survey inspections and controls to looking at open trench OSHA policy. So some financial topics. So we've looked at a lot of capitalization. Utilities are a very capital intensive industry. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about how that capital process works. And then finally, IT, you got to make sure that your critical infrastructure has appropriate cybersecurity, that you're protecting your users appropriately, your billing system, that sort of thing. And then finally, agreed upon procedures. So we do management assistance and assurance. So we work with our externals to do things like cash reconciliation. We have an underground storage deal we help them validate every year. And so that's some of those procedures. You gonna talk about the next one?
you want me to take the history of
Up to you.
science?
It's up to you.
All right.
I could take it.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna say this is
all
your
right.
subject.
Just real quick. So he says it's my subject. I've actually managed 12 years. I managed the SOX program. So basically 2002, and you guys have all heard of Enron, WorldCom. So that's when the law came into being. And I would encourage everybody, if you think SOX is complex, go read the legislation. It's literally 2 pages long. We've taken 2 pages and made volumes that look like a set of encyclopedias out of them. But the legislation itself is 2 pages long. So we implemented 2004. So that's when most companies you'll find implemented it. Overall purpose is to protect investors, right? So some of the things we saw come on board is the PCAOB, which regulates external auditors. And the thing that we interact with is the PCAOB will push down findings, and we have to help our externals respond to those findings on their audit file. New rules for external auditors, right? So things like 5-year rotation for partners, mandatory, some mandatory auditor rotation, although that's optional to a degree. So the big thing for us is a required internal controls. So a lot of folks, especially early on, joked that Sarbanes-Oxley was the Internal Auditor Employment Act, because you had to put in so many internal controls around it. And then finally, new penalties for violating rules. So nothing is quite as unnerving. The CFO looks like he goes, "Not going to jail, am I?" So they're usually joking, but it's so. Now we'll let you. Let's see. I think we talked about a lot of this. So
Yeah.
basically how our program works is we do a top-down assessment, right? So we work with the business to define what's material, and then map those to controls. And then we help them design new controls and new processes as we identify those gaps. And then we ultimately go back and we certify those on a quarterly basis, and we do testing once an interim, once it roll forward. That's just a little what we're talking there. And then we test what we call our COSO, which is really the entity level controls. Okay.
Yeah, for operational audits, like Andy said, he kind of went over this a little bit already. It can be anywhere from going out into the field to look at open trenches, make sure we have the right OSHA procedures in place to keep everyone safe, all the way to just doing a typical revenue audit that's kind of financially related, but we're also looking at the processes behind it as well as the systems enacted with it. We do perform an annual risk assessment each year. The director, with the input of the managers, will kind of go get the tone across the company to seek certain areas that are relevant and high risk at the time. Obviously, like cybersecurity is a hot topic, as well as generative AI. There's always questions around that, and something that they want us to look into. From that, they will build the audit plan and try to address the topics as much as we can within the 24 audits.
Yeah, 24 to 30, depending on what our year allows.
And then, as part of the operational audits, we examine compliance, regulations, company policies, and then other KPIs and expectations that, management has for us. For any findings that we do have, typically we go with the low, medium, high finding criteria, which is kind of your standard for internal audit, but we also have talking points, which are talking points we do not follow up on. It's just like best practice. Hey, we're sharing with you. There's no material misstatement or immaterial misstatement whatsoever, but there's a more efficient way to go about this process. We'll share those as well. But for the low, medium, highs, we will circle back around. We require them to provide us a response and an action that they will do to correct the issue. And then we also do agreed upon procedures in which management will ask us specific requests. One that I have been working on each year is SOC reports, SOC reports, which are looking at service providers reports, their individual audit reports, such as for us, we have Oracle. So Oracle is our ERP system. We got to make sure that the system is locked down, because a lot of our data goes to the cloud with Oracle. So we get an audit report and we attest to whether or not we feel the controls are in place with that ERP that we're using. So management, with our help, will review those audit reports, because nobody is a specialist in those reports. And they'll ask us to give the input and compile those for our external auditors. Again, that's just one of many different agreed upon procedures that we have. It's just kind of you would call a consulting project, more so than anything. And then also we do external audit assistance, like Andy already mentioned.
Yeah, in the picture there is one of our wells up at our underground storage facility in Florissant. Sorry.
All right.
So just want to talk a little about some of our favorites, just to kind of give you an idea, a little bit better flavor. So one of my favorites, and we've done several iterations of this, but one of my favorites is surveys, inspections, and patrols. So one of the things a lot of folks don't think about is how regulated utilities are. And so one of those regulations requires us to do regular inspections and patrols on our infrastructure. So we were looking at, were we doing them on the right frequency? Were we looking at the right things? The picture here is actually from the aerial patrol. This is an aerial marker meant to be seen from the air. And one of the cool things I got to do is right along with the helicopters, they did the aerial patrol looking for construction and other what we call encroachments around our pipeline, meaning stuff that was built near on our pipeline. So they do that once a week and got to fly with them. And that was kind of a neat thing to get to see what they do. But went on some other ride-alongs and looked at a gentleman doing cathodic protection inspections, which we put a big anode to cathodically protect to make sure it doesn't corrode bare steel pipelines. And so that's right along with him as well. So that's that audit. And then the other one, just want to talk about is our fleet audit. So as a utility, we have a pretty decent sized fleet. So what we've done is we've actually gone out and made sure that the fleet assets match our books. So if it's on there as a Shelby Silverado, is it a Shelby Silverado, or do I get out there and find out, well, no, it's actually a say, Ford F-150. So we verify it's the right type of vehicle. We verified mileage. This car, you see it's hoods up because we found out some of them had dead batteries. What does that say about the vehicle usage if it's sitting so long it has a dead battery? And so that was kind of a neat audit to get out, talk about the issues they were having with the vehicles, validate those issues, run into assets that are marked wrong. So those are a couple examples of some of the ones I've enjoyed over the years. Turn over to Eric.
Yeah, so I came from a grain background, so I kind of was heavily involved with hedging and derivatives. So anytime I have a chance to look at broker statements and see how it's impacting the P&L, that's what I really enjoy. So anytime I have a chance to that's one of my areas that I like. Similar to what Andy said, we also do inspections of our infrastructure, such as a regulator station, where we're taking high pressure gas and bringing it to low pressure gas to your household. Just ensuring that they have been inspected, they're in place, undamaged, locked down, so nobody can further damage them. And then, my last one is going around stock report compilation that we do. As part of that, I'm working with all different forms of management, all the way up to the CFO. So, it's a good way to network and then also be an expert in an area that nobody really wants to look into.
So with that, I know you guys sent questions or any like live questions. If not, I think I pull those up. I'm assuming. Yes.
So, at the beginning of your presentation, I saw that you had a safety tip and, I thought that was funny because this past summer I had an internship with Bungie. Also who just merged with Viterra this past summer and I was a part of that and that was super cool. So I'm very familiar with, ag accounting and everything that goes into that. And I know that, well, we also did like safety tips at the beginning of all our presentations, but, going along with like, do you guys often visit the sites, when your guys are doing your audits and everything? Cause I know that was pretty popular with our
Yeah.
auditors, is we would often visit the plants and everything and, getting to communicate directly with the workers there. I thought it was such a great thing to get to experience too, is it made it a lot more like involved and you weren't
Yeah.
just like staying in the office, you were like actually.
yeah.
With everybody.
Yeah. So actually, I'm in the middle of 2 audits where we did quite a bit of field visits. So, and then, so I did for that fleet one, obviously, we went out and actually touched each individual asset. We didn't rely on them to get back to us the information that driving to the job site. We've also had audits where we've done safety and security. So we've gone out and looked at job sites. We worked to see if the workers know where they're supposed to go for their muster point in the event of an emergency. A lot of our jurisdictions, unfortunately, are high crime, so that's very important for these guys to know, should there be active shooters, severe weather, that sort of. So we've actually gotten that chance to go out and talk with those guys. Right now, I'm finishing up 2 audits, one around our large meter install process, and so as part of that, we got to do a ride along with one of the gentlemen who does the installs on those. And he pointed out all the various features of those meters and doing things like making sure, does the device number on that device match the system? Does the read match the system? Does it have all its locks? So you'll see there's normally several places on a larger meter where you get the gas out of, but they're not using it, it's supposed to be locked. So we make sure those are locked. So that's one I'm finishing up. And the other one we're working on is our vegetation management. So anywhere we have a high pressure pipeline, we're supposed to have it cleared 10 feet in either direction above ground so we can inspect it and make sure it's not leaking. So we actually went out and walked those, inspected those and reported back and got to work with some of the field crews to actually locate the pipeline. Because you can look on a map, and I will tell you, get there, you can't tell if there's a gas line right there. So the crews came out with us at some of those instances and actually showed us where the lines were, marked it off and helped us with those engagements. Yeah, we get a lot of opportunities to go in there.
Did you work in internal audit then? Or-
No, I worked in corporate accounting, so I did a lot of like intercompany stuff.
Sure.
And I was really involved with, the closing of like the balance sheet for the Viterra merger because I was like right in the midst of
Yeah.
that. And so I was working on a lot of that, but
That's always fun.
I know, I had lots of friends who were also in audit and it was
Gotcha.
super cool to see pictures of them going to the plants and everything.
Yeah.
So,
Yep, that's what, it's the world's greatest field trip. You're always
Yeah.
going somewhere, learning new
Yeah.
people, so.
Yeah, I mean, even to things like, we sometimes go without an audit purpose, like one of the things that we do is we jokingly call it our goodwill tour. Where the managers will actually go out to the rural areas of our service territories, because the risks there are way different than you're gonna get in the metropolitan. They have coverage issues, they have shortage issues you don't see in the urban areas. And so we will actually go out and spend about a week driving location to location, just visiting with management in those areas to get a flavor for what their risk is, to make sure we're boiling that into our risk program as well.
I've got a few questions,
Yeah.
so. I did do auditing on oil companies when I was in audit, which doesn't really say anything, I don't remember any of it. But I'm curious about natural gas as far as infrastructure goes, you mentioned that Spire owns their own pipelines. Do you leverage other companies' pipelines for transmission as well, or is it all flowing?
Yes, no, so to get it to, so the natural gas industry is broken up into 3 parts. So there's what they call wellhead, where you're actually pulling out of the ground. There is midstream, which is anything from, we talked a little about, we own some midstream. So anything like your gas storage and your interstate pipelines, and interstate meaning it literally crosses state lines. And then you've got what you call your LDCs or local distribution companies, and that's what you're familiar with as the utility. So we have to, in order to get the gas, because we don't gather it in any of our jurisdictions, we have to actually send it through an interstate pipeline. Go back, couple slides, go back to
Yeah,
that
that-
marketing slide. Oh, one more. Yep. So this is actually a map of all the pipeline networks we work on. And so if you were to go down to our office in Houston where they're doing all of this work at Spire Marketing, there is an expert that knows how to schedule and work with each of these pipelines. So it's not a one for one. You may have 2 or 3 pipelines, but the point is that there's a lot of knowledge. It's more than just trading a stock, right? You got to know not only where to buy it, but how to ship it on that pipeline and at what best price, right? Because as you can see, some of these cross, you got to figure out, well, do I just ship it all in the same pipeline? Do I move it because it's cheaper? So yeah, but we use interstate pipelines, and how that'll generally work is Spire Marketing will buy the gas, schedule it, and then it comes to our utilities or another marketer we work with. We don't work exclusively with Spire Marketing, but they do a lot of our purchasing. And I know we're going to talk, Dr. Deere's class, we're going to talk a little bit about how that works with consolidation. So but yeah, that's like I said, that's what that map is. That's all the interstate pipelines we work with across that cross section of the country.
So is there a supply chain division within Spire?
There is, yeah. So there's kind of 2 pieces to that, right? So there's a supply chain division that buys all the other stuff, and then we have people that do nothing but gas supply. Their entire job is to figure out how we're getting the gas, how to get it through the pipeline. They monitor our system too, so they're also in charge of our gas control room that controls all the critical valves, all the regulator stations, monitor pressures, odorization, all of those things. So that's all housed within our gas supply group. And besides building some of the contractual obligation stuff, they do all the gas purchasing for the company in that group. Outside of places, Spire Marketing is buying both for us, and they have third-party customers that they're buying for as well.
We have to be at arm's length.
Yeah, that's the important part to
Well,
know is
yeah.
we are required by law to be an arm's length
That
from
is-
Spire Marketing. So we have to do all those transactions in good faith. We can't do special pricing or any of that. All of them have to be contractually arm's length. I think it's 3 bids we have to get on all of it. So
Something that Eric talking about, I think, was SOC reports, which is actually a fairly recent topic for us to cover in this course. So when you were talking about SOC reports, there are these reports that you receive from service providers for Spire, or does Spire actually prepare SOC reports for other?
We do not prepare, we're not a service provider in that sense. Yes, we are gathering them from our vendors. That's a fun process in itself, just because I mean, we're a fairly large company, but we are little fish in comparison to a lot of other companies. I mean, we're not Fortune 50. We can't say, hey, you could lose your service if you don't give us our report right now. So it's a waiting game sometimes for those reports, but I think from an external reliance perspective right now, we look at about 36 different reports of service providers.
Those primarily type 1 reports?
Primarily type 1 for our Deloitte audit. Our pension audit as well is looking at SOC 2. But if anything, such as our Oracle system, we're also gathering the SOC 2 because our high impact data is going out in the world. So
we talked a lot in my class about the difference between the SOC 1 and type, or actually I said type 1, I meant SOC 1.
No worries.
We talked about the difference between the type 1 report and the type 2 report, with the type 2 being far more detailed.
Yes.
I'm assuming that you receive reports of both the different types as well as.
We do type 2, but we're gathering the SOC 1 and SOC 2. We're not primarily, we stay away from the type 1 just because we want the detail. We want to know the exceptions, and we want to know the management response as well. So, and obviously, for those that don't know, there's also a SOC 3, which is essentially a sales report that they give to you before you engage with a vendor. Because they don't like to air out their dirty laundry until you're already paying for the bill.
And I wanted to ask you a question about, you mentioned COSO very briefly, and I think my students will tell you that COSO is one of their things to talk about. That and segregation of duties, but they'll talk about.
you and the PCOB.
Yeah.
Like an auditor or something. Yeah, so what, with respect to control environments in place at Spire, what responsibility do you as internal auditors have to evaluate that?
Yeah, so we serve basically as both the administrator, so we go out and we make sure that those things are in place and we test them. So some of that gets a little gray because of the ambiguity you get on some of those controlling entity controls. As far as is it collecting, is it performing the control? But like I said, we primarily serve as the administrator, making sure those things are in place. And then we go back and do the testing, generally like test of one on a lot of it. You know, because it's not like regular control activities where you're testing them once at interim, once at a roll forward period at the end of the year, because you got to get that 90-day reliance. A lot of the COSA you don't have to, so we're just doing it once in the spring and then picking up any of that year-end stuff at year-end. But our main role is obviously to administer, like I said, between making sure they're in place and then going back and doing the test. A lot less rigor around that generally than the control activities. Any other questions? No.
Good one here.
So kind of just finding were there other like qualitative risks that you found that were like very surprising, either in the field or?
In my previous life, yes, but I'll let Andy go first if it.
I don't know if surprising. I mean, we talked about the car with the dead battery. That was a little bit kind of surprising. We weren't even looking for it, right? Because the way we found it is we're trying to get the odometer reading. In most vehicles nowadays, you have to turn the vehicle on. They couldn't turn the vehicle over. So just little things you don't think about like that. I wouldn't say we ran into anything huge. But stuff like that, it's IT quirks that may influence billing that you back into because you find one and you start looking into it more and oh, wow, that's actually a really big issue. You found 1 of 15, but in actuality impacts X number of customers. Actually found the same with that surveys inspection controls audit. I found one segment they hadn't inspected, but it turns out they left an entire like 66 miles of infrastructure off the inspection maps. So, but things of, you know, kind of how one little finding can impact more of a global view of the world. No major surprises, thankfully, and that's one of the things. Spire's pretty locked down on control environment, so.
What else are we doing this year?
Did you take that one?
It's actually quite different than the CPA. It's kind of a self-learning course. They actually have their own software to utilize. So it's definitely not as rigorous as a CPA or a CIA. You can go in. It's posted by them, so it's their materials. So you can expect similar questions. I think it's 4 parts, and I'm sorry if I'm misspeaking to that, but I think it's 4 parts, and it's at your own pace. It's a great skill set to have, just because fraud is always growing. Unfortunately, it is always growing and always detailing everything that we do test. As a good auditor, you have to include fraud risk as part of your program, as part of your audit program when you're planning, and show that you looked at the risks. So definitely something to look into if you're looking for a lighter certification, although it does not carry the same weight as a CPA or a CIA would.
Is there anything specific about like the natural gas industry that you guys think like is different than other types of internal audit?
Yeah, lots of nuance. So one of the things that most people don't realize, as I said earlier, is we're one of the most heavily regulated industries in the country for several reasons. A, we're carrying a, you know, an invisible, tasteless, odorless gas. So the odor you smell is actually something we add called mercaptan. So in that sense, you know, highly flammable. So in that sense, we work around dangerous products, but also we operate what's called a natural monopoly. So you'll notice anytime you go into, they have one gas utility. They have one electric utility generally. And so because of that, we're heavily regulated as far as how we set our rates and all the things we have to do to comply both with state regulation and federal regulation. And so that adds a layer of nuance to everything. Like we keep 3 sets of books. We keep a GAP set of books. We keep a what they call a FERC set of books, which is FERC stands for Federal Energy Regulation Commission, because we have to turn certain numbers in on a FERC basis. And then we keep a tax set of books because of how some of the tax laws work, a lot of the infrastructure we do. So it's not that any one thing is complicated about the industry, it's that you keep adding layers of nuance to the puzzle. And so because of that, it keeps it interesting. So things like depreciation, we're not looking at it as you would in a gas sense. Our regulator sets how we depreciate. So things like, once again, how we do our rates. RevRec doesn't apply to us because we have a rate mechanism that's mandated. And so as a result, we don't apply traditional GAAP revenue recognition. So it's a lot of nuance like that when you're looking at accounting topics. And then when you're looking at operations, virtually everything we do has some sort of regulation to it, whether that be installing the infrastructure, doing our inspections, the safety we have to take with OSHA. So there's a regulatory compliance layer to almost everything we do, and that really makes it kind of complicated because it's not all even the same regulator. Does that answer your question?
So just for fun, I have a question for you. So, you're talking about regulation in this industry, and
Yeah.
there's a pretty, I'm thinking of improper adjective, and say a visceral example of what happens when energy regulation or energy becomes deregulated with Enron and
Mhm.
California back in the
Yeah,
early 2000s.
absolutely.
How would you think how would you speculate that your job would change if all of a sudden, natural gas became deregulated or your company became deregulated?
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, there would be a lot. I think you'd see a lot more around anti-fraud controls. One of the things that the regulation does, because everything is such open book, is I do believe that it acts as a counterbalance or almost a control to fraud to an extent. And I think if you didn't have that, if you didn't have the public hearings on your rate making process, if you didn't have to submit your capital to the state, if you didn't have to get permitting around all this stuff to a large degree, I think you'd see a lot more opportunity for fraud. So I think that'd change our focus quite a bit. I think you'd see where we're looking at a lot more company procedure. I think you'd also see intermunicipality competition, which Ohio has a model of it. I'm not very familiar with it, but literally they put blocks of residents out there to bid on the gas companies who can sell into that jurisdiction. It's kind of a different animal. And so that's an example of a little bit of deregulation and, and so you see a lot of speculation, that sort of thing. So I think in that regard, you also be looking at a lot of that too, is a lot more speculation, a lot more trying to one-upsmanship, a lot more competition among providers, which is liable to also make the environment less safe. So. That.
And you talk about the environmental aspects of regulations. That's kind of, I think, what we always think about when we think about regulation. It's what some you have responsibilities in the area.
Yeah. So we've actually done a couple audits in that area. So we looked at, so we talked about our storage field in Wyoming. We actually just got done taking it from 4 BCF or 1 billion cubic feet of gas to 20 BCF. And so it's a pretty major construction project on our part. And as part of that, we had to make sure we're complying with all the environmental regulations out there to remediate the site. We had to watch out for things like endangered species. We run into that every day. We talked about that a little bit on the vegetation management audit, that piece where we're looking out for the environment. On a more global financial risk scale, we actually look at our CSR report every year. So even though SEC rule didn't end up going into place, we'll still put out a corporate sustainability report, which talks about all our environmental commitments every year. So we plug in and help audit back to those numbers and look and do a high level review to make sure that the numbers are all supported for that report as well. And make sure that it's like they're gathering them correctly and all that stuff.
Supported numbers for the rate case this year as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we've looked at that. I've looked at stuff like waste management. So there's actually quite a bit of regulation that goes into waste management, what you have to do with it, the records you have to keep on, especially if you're disposing of any kind of hazardous waste. As an industry, we've got a little bit of an issue with what they call PCBs. It's a legacy chemical that is in our pipelines because of what we're using to grease back in the day. And so how you dispose of the soil, you find that in, there's all kinds of regulation around that. Wastewater of all things. I mean, there's a lot of reporting that goes into things like wastewater, and we're using it for things like you can actually dig holes with wastewater. Or in the case of our underground storage fields, that's part of the byproduct when you pull the gas out of the ground. It's not just gas, you get oil, you get water, you get what we call natural gas liquids. So we have to peel all that off, and there's environmental reporting around all that as well. See if I can pull up those questions you sent me. We can go through those.
Good random call up one of the students and say, what was your question?
That works too. However you want to do it. It's your class. We're just happy to be here.
I don't really want to call this Tuesday.
That's fair. We get to leave. That's fine. I don't know if you test me.
Don't worry, everybody's watching you right now, so
That's all right.
I guess I can help you.
A good movie you've seen recently.
Oh, man. We saw Freakier Friday in theaters. That wasn't bad. I was a little triggered by the reference to John Mayer, though.
We were talking about the series Dirty Money on Netflix on the way here
Yeah.
as well too.
So, have they made you guys watch The Smartest Guys in the Room yet? So if you haven't got a chance, we talked about Sarbanes-Oxley, I highly encourage you. It delves into all of what happened at Enron. And so if you're looking for a better understanding of why we have Sarbanes-Oxley, watch The Smartest Guys in the Room. It talks about the entire thing. It was, when I was here, it was actually required watching. We watched it in class.
So we actually watched that in my very first year of teaching audit, and I had watched it before, but I'd forgotten about the.
So like, yeah, the middle,
Blue pie,
yeah, Luke,
yeah, where they for some reason decided to show pictures of strippers.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm never doing that again.
The funniest thing, so we had to watch it in 2 classes, and that's where she cut it off. It's right after that scene, and the entire class is, what? So, yeah.
Big Short's a good one too.
Big Short face.
Yes. Yeah, The Big Short, what's this one? Maybe.
I think you all seen the Big Short. Required viewing over it.
Aha, I found them. So, yeah, so the Big Short actually does a really nice job of explaining that whole situation, though. So the first question, essentially, how much do we interact with external auditors? So we interact with them on a weekly basis, if not daily basis, so. We have monthly standing meetings, weekly standing meetings with them. Excuse me, so, but I mean, I'll get calls, middle of the day from our externals trying to get information. So that's one of the other informal roles we like to play, is we will actually help them understand the business topics more. So we've had a chance to really dive in and learn a lot of these things, and they're trying to get it done in what, a 4-month engagement. And so we'll help them understand the business topics more, we'll help connect them with the right business partners. So one of the invaluable roles we play that is not a formal role is that conduit between management and our external auditor. So what are the risk management funds? How do we maintain independence and objectivity? So, and that's a good question. One of the things to think about is, how are you independent from somebody who's paying you? And so it's a hard balance to keep, right? But one of the first thing is, we report directly to our board of directors. So technically, the only people that can fire our CA, the board of directors. So administratively, we report up to our chief administrative officer, which also helps. You generally don't want your internal auditors reporting to the CFO for obvious reasons, because it makes it kind of hard to audit him. But I think a lot of it goes back to integrity, right? So it's just thinking back to integrity and ethics, and really remembering that at the end of the day, the people you work for aren't concerned with, how well your friends are doing, or, if other departments of the company care. It's all about, watching out for the investors and the community and then the shareholders, so. Anything to add to that one?
No, I think you hit it right on the head there. And then at the end of the day, like Andy said, our audit plan is approved by the board, so they spell out in our charter that we have the accessibility to the resources that we need, and are responsible for looking at the areas that we're looking into, so.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're gonna say that's kind of what the biggest tensions are. So obviously the tensions are when we find something that they're not a fan of. So, we try to work through those with grace. It's always lead with the facts. I think if you can always remember to lead with the facts, you'll always wind up okay, right? Because it's either going to be where they get upset, but they don't really have a leg to stand on, or, you can just take it to the next person up the management chain. I mean, we're in a good situation that we have a good working relationship with all of our business partners. But I think that's the most important thing around some tension situations. It's always just leave with the facts. How do we start our auditing process? So kind of like Eric said, with our risk assessment process, we're actually finishing that up right now. We will sit down in small groups with about 300 leaders across the company and across all our jurisdictions. So, we'll do probably 10 or so sessions in St. Louis. We'll do 2 or 3 down in Birmingham. couple in Kansas City, we go down to Houston. So we go to all our operating areas because we feel it's important to sit down in person with these groups and actually talk about their risks. And then from there, we usually get back about 300 to 400 lines of data that we have to boil down to about 24 to 30 audits. So that's the process we're in right now, is we'll actually take our chunks for about 2-3 weeks, probably 2-3 hours a week, and just sit in a room and boil those down to auditable topics. So all told, it's probably about 200-300 hours worth of work just to develop our audit.
Yeah, and even from there, once we decide upon a topic, even within the topic, we're also creating that work program, scoping in and out areas as we see fit. Because obviously some areas may overlap with others that we have recently tested, or we know that there are good controls or SOX controls in place that we're already testing throughout the year.
What would you say is like your busy season in the year where like you're spending the most time in the office and there's like a strenuous timeline? If you guys have any.
So this is my opinion, it might be different than Andy. We have kind of two different sessions of audits. We also throw SOX in between, year-end SOX. We're focused mainly on year-end projects and SOX. That, in my opinion, is slower to me, not the best, but see, that's why we're different.
Yeah, so it depends. I think there's probably two areas where the business, the spring.
Spring is where I was gonna say is.
Yes, the spring is busy for us because we're doing the brunt of our SOX testing, because we have to get our work done before the lake come in and audit behind us. That's our external. So we do all of our scoping for SOX in January, and then we take about a 2-month break, and then we pick back up in March, and we're doing SOX from March all the way through May, kind of June, then we pick up COSO, then in the middle of July. And then for me, what's always been the busy season, although it won't be this year because it's the first year I haven't ran SOX in a decade, is that year-end period. So we have to test all of our controls in about a month and a half. So what we spent the whole spring testing, we got to do in a month and a half. Now the populations are smaller, but it also means you got to go back and hit each one of them. There's only so much economies of scale of shrinking down those sample sizes. So in addition, we're having to provide a lot more support to Deloitte in that time frame, because they're really digging into our work at that point, really starting to ask questions. And so that's picking up for us right now, actually, usually about the last week of September, all the way through when we file in mid-November. Just so you guys know, we're a 9/30 year end. So for most folks, that time period is probably going to be in spring sometime. For us, it happens in the fall into winter because of the fact that our 9/30 gets what it does.
Yeah. That's why I say it's spring, because we're out doing our operational audits at the same time as doing SOX. So we're answering those questions as well.
Let's go ahead and call it good there, and so a round of applause for our presenters.
Thank you.
A lot of valuable information. Thank you very much, Sean, for coming to talk to us today.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you guys.
Everything. One has to divide it.